Welcome to your first PEA meeting. Hi, my name is Trina Berg, President of the Peoria Education Association. I want to introduce my officers. My Vice President is behind the camera, Frank. Hi, Frank Eager here at Sunrise Mountain. My Secretary, Barb Barkus, who is at Skyview. And my Treasurer, Jessica Batty, who is also at Sunrise Mountain, who won't come on camera apparently. So
I asked if you wanted me to come up there and you said no.
I didn't hear you ask me that, I'm sorry. Today our agenda is we're going to talk about your evaluation and your SLOs. Barb's going to do that presentation. And then we have Nell, who's going to talk about the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, and how that's going to change our profession. And then last we'll do a little bit on the upcoming bond, but we will have an upcoming meeting to specifically talk about the bond. So off to you, Barb. Thank you. Want to clip it to you?
I'm going to sit down and just have you focus on the presentation. I'm having trouble with the mic. The first thing I'm going to go over is the proposed 301 plan from last year, so everybody can see how it's broken down. There did not appear to be many changes this year, and I want everybody to understand, because there was some confusion on some teachers did not get the full amount of the 301, and I want to make sure everybody understands how it's broken down. 33% of the 301 funds, whatever we get this year, to come out from Fund 12. Fund 11 and 13 are in everyone's base pay. So Fund 12 is the performance pay bucket. 33% comes from your performance classification, which is your teacher evaluation. 50% last year was our graduation rate, and 17% comes from the student learning objective. And those classifications, the 33%, which is your teacher evaluation, in order to get 100% of that, you need to be highly effective or effective. Otherwise, you're only going to get 75% of the 33% of the 301 funds. If you score ineffective on your evaluation, it is 0. The district graduation rate, 90% and above is 100%. Our district graduation rate has, since our inception, been above 90%. So that we do not foresee going down at all. The other place where you could conceivably lose some of the 301 funding for pay for performance is in your student learning objective, or your SLO. 17% of that dollar amount depends on your SLO, and you have to get a 3 or a 4 on your SLO in order to get 100%. 2, you get 75%. And for this school year, that goes down to 50%. So last year it was 75, this year it's 50%. And there is a rubric which looks like this on the portal, and I'm going to show you how to get to the documents on the portal for your review, so you know exactly how you're going to be scored. Breaking that down, with a performance classification of 33% and highly effective, 33% of the funds from last year would be $577.30. If the teacher scores highly effective or effective, they would get all of that amount. The graduation rate, which is 50% of the pay for performance, $875 would be available. And since our graduation rate is above 90%, all of that would be earned. And the student learning objective, 17%, breaks down to $297.70. And if the teacher scored a 3, the teacher would get all of that funding. For a teacher that lost points in certain areas, $577.30 out of the $1,750 is still available for classroom performance on your teacher evaluation, but the teacher scored a developing. So last year, the teacher only receives 75% of that. Remember, this year, that amount goes down to 50%. So that is where the dollar amount decreases from the $1,750. The graduation rate would stay the same, and then the SLO on the student learning objective, the teacher did lose money because the teacher scored a 2, so a portion of that was lost and only 75% was awarded. Reducing that original amount of $1,750 to $1,531.26 in performance pay. So if anybody did not get the full amount last year, you need to check your scores, and that is probably why those amounts were lost. Some dates I want to point out: principals were trained last year in November, and then it came out to a survey with the staff. The survey said 70% of the teachers have to approve the plan. It will be the same thing this year, and then it has to get approved by a board meeting. The next thing I want to go to is what is on the portal for this year. Here we go. And so this is a 2016-17 plan that is on the portal. Again, it will cover teacher responsibilities. For a probationary teacher, that would be somebody within their first 3 years, and a continuing teacher. And I'm going to show you how to get to these documents so that you all can review this information.
And so this is evaluation, not performance pay.
This is evaluation, but it's also going to talk about performance pay because it's all in one complete package, because each of the areas affect each other in the performance pay. Make sure you're paying attention to the dates. Some of the dates we found out were loaded in the employee performance system incorrectly, and they have made those changes. So just check with your administrators to make sure that you have the leeway on some of those dates. Because I believe some of them came in as like August 15th on some people, so make sure that you've checked with your administrator on that. Definitions for everything that we talk about is on here. Let's get to, you have your self-assessment, and one of the things that I want to talk about when you're doing your self-assessment is how you evaluate yourself. As teachers, we tend to be overcritical of ourselves and rate ourselves lower than we actually perform in the classroom. So my advice to everyone out there, as you rate yourself, as you're looking at the descriptors, is whatever you think you are, you probably should rate yourself a little bit higher. Okay? Again, you can provide evidence in that screen where you can type up comments on what you're doing in each of those areas. But again, it's up to the administrator if they're going to mark you down to say why they marked you down. Okay, so make sure you're saving your evidence and you are evaluating yourself on your best performance, not that one bad day you had a month ago. That doesn't matter.
Barbara, I did that last year for the first time. I put excelling on almost everything after we had talked about that in the meeting. And you know what? I ended up with excelling, and because they had no reason to say
to mark you down.
So I just did it again for this year.
And you have to remember that as teachers, we are overcritical of ourselves. We don't look for those best and highlight things we do many times. We look for that one incident where things didn't work out right, or you know, and we need to not focus on that. We need to focus on everything we're doing correctly in the classroom. On your learning objective, which is also on this file that I will show you how to get to, it talks about everything you need to put in there. Again, it gives you the same documentation that you find on our performance system, but it's in a PDF format. And then it has a quality assessment criteria for this year and what's acceptable, what needs improvement, and what insufficient is. There's a couple things that I want to point out, and I'm not going to stay on this data area. I just wanted to show you where you can find it. You will have a mid-year checkpoint, and you need to make sure you're paying attention to your dates and get that in on time. You also need to have an end-of-year reflection. And at that end-of-the-year reflection, both you and your administrator will sign it. You will have a classroom observation, and one of the things to point out with that is after your classroom observation, within 5 days, there should be some questions that are sent to you by your administrator. If you are not getting those questions or don't see any of those notes in there within 5 school days afterwards, you need to talk to your administrator and find out what's going on. Your overall evaluation at the end of the year should not be the first time that you see any of your score results. Okay, if that happens, then there's something we need to address there. In the scoring information that's for 2016-17, it breaks down our teacher evaluation system into Group A and Group B teachers, and you will be able to find this on the portal to see where you fit. And also what goes into each of those areas to determine whether you're a or B teacher. And you all should know whether you're A or B teacher. Basically, if you give an AZ merit test or an Ames test, you're an A teacher. If you don't, you're a B teacher. I'm going to click out of there and all right. So again, I'm going back to 2014-15 because there is a document on the end of this one that I want to show everyone. First of all, last year on our plan, 93% of the teachers approved it, 7% did not approve it. We had to have 70% approve it, so 70% did, so we went forward with it. There is also an appeals form. So every year you have 10 days after the final payout to appeal your pay or your evaluation that resulted in your performance pay. Remember, it's after the 10 days after the final payout in July, and it's pursuant to our policies, the GCO policies. So again, I'm going to take you through real quick on how to find these papers out so that you can peruse them yourself. And if you need to appeal anything this year, you know where to find the paperwork to do so. So from the employee portal, there is no like real nice button to click on to find it. If you go into the upper left-hand corner where it says Search All Portal and click on that, you'll get a search bar that comes up, and you type in 301 performance. And all of the documents that pertain to 301 performance pay and SLOs will come up. You can also do a search from that tab on SLO, and all of those documents will come up. Again, there is no one tab you can click on with all of the information that you need. So go to your search bar, which is located in the upper right-hand corner. Type in what you're looking for, and it will take you to all of those documents. I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple things on the employee performance review system. When you open it up, you should see your due dates here. Again, if they aren't set up for the 26th and the 30th, you need to make sure that you've talked to your administrator, because some people's were put in the wrong date where your self-assessment and your student learning objectives are. Okay, so when you go in to rate yourself, I've already submitted mine, so you can't see the drop-down menu. But underneath there is an area that you can type some things in to support the reasons why you're giving yourself the score. As Ronnie said, you notice that is where I scored myself. Okay? You can click on the I to find the descriptors. In reading the descriptors, keep in mind if you're doing 90% of what it says in that descriptor, you're doing that. Okay? Don't go down a category because of one area. We wouldn't do that to our students. We shouldn't do that to ourselves. Student learning objectives, when you go in here, you just type in here again. It is pretty self-explanatory. Your SLO roster is on here. To add students to the list, when you type on here, you just hit add to the list. And you can type the student's name in. I'm not going to type a student's name in for privacy reasons, but once you type a student's name in, it's going to come up for your school. You just add them to the list, and you don't even have to type in the full name. Now, back to student learning objectives. And the student learning objectives, one of the things that in the wording that you need to keep in mind. It shouldn't be an and. When you're looking at student learning objectives, you're looking at their overall performance, and you can write that as both an overall performance level for everyone or a growth model for students that score lower. So one of the things that I have done in the past, and that works because I was on the committee that wrote the SLOs, is in saying that 70% of your students, 80% of your students are going to score 80% or better, or they're going to score within this range and have a growth model for that. Usually it's about 25 to 30% growth you want to see. So those kids that scored 20% on your pretest, maybe they're not going to get up to 80%. But if you show that growth, that still counts.
So you pick one or the other, you said?
No, you pick both. You can say this or this. So if you say and, 70% of the students are going to score 80% or better, and they're going to show this much growth, then in the wording, you've made both of them, you've made your students have to achieve both of those. Okay? Again, we differentiate for our students, we need to differentiate for ourselves. So make sure that when you write those goals for your students, you're looking at your